Right. Well, hang on. No. Right. So now we're on to mechanized. Razvedka. So scouts, basically. AK set or AKM, suppressed, SVD. Not suppressed. GP25. Is that the same grenade launcher as everyone else? Now I have to check. Oh no, everyone else is the GP34. I think. GP34. GP34. Yeah. There. So that's GP. Okay, yeah, here we go. That's GP25. AKMs, which is an interesting option. They're shooting 7.62. And then you have snipers, SVD, and an SV98, which is shooting 7.62 as well. Huh. Okay. Or you can splurge for the for the 50 cal. Which doesn't really affect most anything else about them. And then you have the BMP or the BRM-1K, which is basically a BMP-1. So it's got the 73mm Grom gun. And that's a decent heat pen. HE is... meh. Again, this can be destroyed by a PS. Huh. Then again, I suppose the round isn't traveling too fast, because the Grom gun was a relatively low-pressure gun system. So I suppose, since the round isn't traveling too fast, you could destroy it with APS. Which I guess would make it would also help explain why you could destroy the projectiles from the recoilless rifle with APS as well, because they aren't. Also, you can't use the Grom on the move, which I find very amusing. But what I was saying was, I guess that also explains why you could destroy the projectiles from the recoilless rifles. You can up armor it to a pretty decent amount, but it removes its ability to swim. So, also, I'd just like to point out something about the BMP's design. You see these really thick doors? Yeah, no, that isn't any sort of heavy armor. These little weird circles, yeah, those are caps because the door is a fuel tank. Which means if the vehicle gets hit and it catches fire, well, don't be in it if it gets hit and catches fire. Let's put it that way. The ironic bit is that the idea of using the doors as a fuel tank did actually have a purpose. And not just because Soviet engineers were sadistic and wanted to see their troops burned to death. The purpose was actually intended as protection from radiation. Because diesel fuel, if I understand correctly, absorbs radiation. So the vehicle, the doors were turned into fuel tanks, and ideally you'd fill them up with diesel, and then if there was a source of radiation nearby, like say a nuclear blast, then the people inside would be protected from the radiation, at least to a degree. That was the idea. As for whether or not it worked, BRM1K represents 2021. Okay, that's kind of interesting. And you can use the autocannon on the move. Or you have the PRB, or yeah, the PRP-4A turret. Oh, it's cute! Look at the dinky little guy in the turret. But you also have a laser and you have a longer view range. I like that. I'm gonna keep that. I mean, it's basically, it looks like it's the Grom turret, I think. At least I think it's the Grom turret. Is it the Grom turret? It might be slightly bigger than the Grom turret. I don't know. I can't tell. I think it's the Grom turret. It's just got, like, a PKT. And it's also got smoke, which is something that you don't have. Oh, no, you do have it with the Grom. I'm sorry, I find it very amusing that you can't fire the Grom on the move. And so... Alright. Infantry. Oh, you've got a lot of infantry here. You've got barge standard motor rifles. These are basically the same as these guys, just slightly different, slightly different names, slightly different squad size. Specifically, okay, so they appear to trade in the PKT and the Dragunov for a pair of RPK-74s. Okay. And they have a couple of RPG-26s. Alright. And then you have a Manpads team with Iglas. Okay, so these guys have the PKP. And again, Iglas. For, you know, Manpads. These are assault troops, because what I was saying earlier, we're looking at what was it? BMO-T, I think? Yeah, BMO-T. But what I was saying earlier was that Russia has, from my understanding, dedicated assault infantry that use things like incendiary or thermobaric rocket launchers. Which is this. Can be destroyed by APS, but I'm honestly not sure there's anything that that can mount an APS that would be threatened by this. Although I suppose it could be useful against infantry. If you're targeting... Well, yeah, it can only target infantry. So, I wonder, if you're targeting infantry that are right next to a vehicle with APS, would the APS intercept the rocket? Huh. I don't know. I'm gonna have to try and test that out somehow. RPOM, thermobaric, slightly longer range. Because the game does have thermobarics. Generally, you only see thermobarics in use by the Russians, particularly things like thermobaric bombs. But thermobaric bombs, compared to conventional bombs, seem to have much greater damage, or it seems to have better damage, better blast radius, but much lower pen. And then we have a faggot team with two faggots. 9M111-2. And decent damage, decent range. Or we can go with the Factoria? Not sure. 9M111M or 9M111-2. Okay. And these have slightly better pen, slightly better range. Not great, but not terrible, I don't suppose. And then... 9M111-2. 9M111-2. Okay. And these have slightly better pen, slightly better range. Not great, but not terrible, I don't suppose. And then... 9M111-3. 9M111-4. 9M111-5. 9M111-6. 9M111-7. 9M111-8. 9M111-9. 9M111-9. 9M111-10. 9M111-11. 9M111-12. 9M111-13. 9M111-14. 9M111-15. 9M111-16. 9M111-17. 9M111-18. 9M111-19. 9M111-20. 9M111-21. 9M111-22. 9M111-23. 9M111-24. 9M111-25. 9M111-26. 9M111-27. 9M111-28. 9M111-29. 9M111-30. 9M111-31. 9M111-32. 9M111-33. 9M111-34. 9M111-35. 9M111-36. 9M111-37. 9M111-38. 9M111-39. 9M111-40. 9M111-41. 9M I mean, it's a better option. That's still going to threaten most IFVs, but a tank's going to look at that and laugh. And then we have PKPs. 3 PKPs to be specific, and 3 RPG-26s. You can upgrade them to cords, which they have 2 cords, and they still have the RPG-26s. Okay. The RPG-29 Vampire, which I honestly don't know if that's supposed to be a shoulder-fired recoilless rifle or if that's supposed to be an rocket launcher. Whatever it is, it's reloadable. It's got a lot of heat rounds. So. And then we've got these guys, which I don't remember these guys in the Muro document. But they do have an RPG-7 with 40mm HE. So I'm guessing that's just like a standard 40mm rocket, or a standard HE rocket. So I think these might be your assault infantry. Yeah, they're set up kind of like assault infantry. Yeah, that's what these guys are. Assault infantry, I guess. So. Also, apparently there's 2 RPGs here. Okay, so yeah, that guy has the other one. And then we have vehicles now. Lots of vehicles. The BM-01, which I believe is basically like an assault / incendiary armed version of the BMP. You can up armor it, which apparently can still swim while being up armored, which is worth noting, I guess. So, but it can only carry 4 guys, and I'm honestly not sure. Unless they disembark through those doors. Is this supposed to be a BMP-1 or a BMP-2? It's got the 30mm like a BMP-2. In fact, I think that is supposed to be a BMP-2, but I'm not sure. And then you have just a BMP-1. Literally a BMP-1. So, I said it before, but one thing I kind of wished the game got as a Russian specialization was a sort of like older equipment specialization containing things like the BMP-1, the BMP-2, the BMD-1, the BMD-2, maybe like the BTR-60, the BTR-70. And the idea behind it, and maybe things like the 2S1 or possibly the 2S3, and the idea behind it was as you have a specialization with cheap units that are largely outdated, that can do a little bit of everything. You can airdrop some are amphibious. The specialization can do a bit of everything, but a majority of its vehicles, or at least its ground vehicles anyway, are cheap, and they're old. So it can at least mesh well with most other specializations. Again, you can't use the Grom gun on the move, which I find very amusing. Which is also accurate because as I might have already said before, the gun wasn't stabilized. I didn't look at the, yeah. Then you have the BMP-1. Armor package, which removes its ability to swim. The BMP-1P, which has a faggot that isn't particularly great, but okay. The BMP-1PG gives you a grenade launcher, which you can use on the move, I'd like to point out, which is probably something you're going to want. Since, again, you can't use the Grom on the move, or the BMP-1AM, which, all things considered, might not be a bad option. Just kitted out like this, it wouldn't be a bad transport vehicle, but then again, the PG might be an option if you want some firepower. The Grom only has a range of 800 meters. Oh wait, you get the Faggot M with the PG upgrade compared to the Faggot with the P upgrade. Okay. So you can, so yeah, I can see an argument for either the PG, the BMP-1 PG, or the BMP-1 AM. Either or. The BMP-1 PG if you want something that can do a bit more anti-armor work. The BMP-1 AM for something that's maybe just a touch more multi-purpose, and you know, can fire on the move. And this thing can somehow fit 8 guys in it. Which is amusing, because wasn't the infantry only like 7? Yeah, it was only 7. And then you have the BMP-2. You know, I kind of... Well, if they're going to do that, then just make the different squads like 7... Or make the different squads like 8 guys, and just make all the other vehicles hold 8 guys. Eh. The BMP-2, I mean, this can hold 7, but this can hold 8. Yeah, it's not... Okay. The BMP-2, again, you can up armor it, which does not remove its ability to swim. Okay. The BMP-2G turret with the grenade launcher and Conqueror's M. You have to stop the fire of the Conquerors, though. Well, I mean, okay, so the Conquerors does come base. Or we have a Berserk turret, if I pronounce that correctly, with Cornets. Regular Cornets that you do have to stop to fire. Alright. That's kind of interesting. And then you have a BMP-3, which is just like a bog standard BMP-3. So, you do have a reactive armor package, which really does do a lot for the protection of this thing. And again, you can still swim, which is interesting. BMP-3M turret, which gives us a jammer. And a slightly longer range. Okay, so yeah, it's like the upgrade for the naval infantry then. What is the name for infantry? Yeah. So it's basically the same. Okay. And then you have the Apoca module, which I vaguely remember, and I think this is from the February 2024 beta. I vaguely remember this being in the Guards Tank Battalion Specialization. You have an autocannon, PKT, Cornets, again basic Cornets, and Blatt, which I'm guessing is housed right here. I don't know if it's going to rise up or not. No, there it goes. So, So yeah. Of course, by that time, the vehicle's 120 points, and then again, you do have a lot of firepower. So, guess I can't really bash it for that. Huh. And the BTO, which, if memory serves, is an MTLB chassis. Okay, that's 6 road wheels. That's definitely. I'm pretty darn sure that's an MTLB chassis. Yeah, that's MTLB, which means that this is MTLBU, which is what I thought it was. And we've got RPOAs, thermobaric rockets, and a PKT. And this thing can carry 8 guys. And you can paradrop it. You can up armor it where it can't carry guys anymore, and you can't airdrop it. And it appears to have a dozer blade at the back. I'm honestly not sure why. I think I'd just be more inclined to use this thing. MTLB 23-2. Or you could give it... Oh, that's interesting. You can give it a pair of Iglas and a 30mm autocannon. Alright. That's interesting. And it has a PKT in the mini turret. I argue that's a bit redundant with the 23mm autocannon, but hey. And you do have an armor package, which again removes the vehicle's ability to both swim and be airdropped. Then you have the Strum S, which I believe is an ATGM carrier. Yep, there it is. It just pops the thing out. Kind of cute. Oh, the Kokons. The helicopter ones. Anti-infantry, regular explosive. Or you can go with the SM for the Tatkas. These things are basically radar guided. This is a radar up here. You can't airdrop, or you can't up armor the darn thing, but that means that you can airdrop it and it can float. So. The T-72B1. No, this is the cheapest tank in the game. And again, if you want to get pedantic and you start talking about things like, well, I suppose if you really want to get pedantic and start talking about cheapest tanks in the game, I think that would technically be the Sheridan at only 75 points. So. Although, for that matter, what is the cost of the Sprut? 80. Okay, so yeah, it would be the Sheridan. Because the Sheridan is 75 points. The M8 is 90. So. Of course, because your tank only has like, your tank is only 130 points, it is, it's a bit crap. It's a bit of a giant steaming pile of crap. It's a... yeah, it's a bit crap. Heat's not bad. Heat, in fact, again, heat is better than the AP. Just flat out. Just give me the heat round. You do have an engine package, which is going to help. That off-road speed. Armor, you can go from contact 1 to contact 5, which would help the protection greatly. So, I mean, okay, to be fair, the tank is still pretty cheap. And the tank is still pretty cheap. And it's decently fast and decently armored. It's just that the firepower is hot garbage in the middle of July. You can go the T-71B1, the T-71B, which is basically the same, but you now get gun-launched missiles that, to be fair, don't suck. Or the T-72BA, which, again, gun-launched missiles. Okay, so the ammunition is starting to not suck. Wow, that is really bad. The ammunition is starting to not suck. Okay, so that still is vaguely usable. And then we have the T-72B3. What do we got here? Ammunition that is... eh. Did I already look for the, at the camos for this? I think I did. But I don't think I looked for this one. T-72B3. $200 base cost. I mean, it's already better out of the gate than what the BA is. For one, again, you get better ammunition. Heat is better, you get better missiles. Well, heat's the same, but you still get better kinetics. I would still take the heat round over the, I'd still take the heat round over the kinetics. You do get an engine upgrade to make it faster. Okay, so you got the B3, you got the B3M, which gives you a bit extra side armor. And a bit extra health. The B3M Ultrazets 2016, which gives you even better side armor, but doesn't appear to do anything to the ammunition. The B3M with an arena, which I'm guessing is what these are. I think. I honestly do not know. Yeah, I'm guessing that's what arena is. And then Operazet's 2016 with arena for 300 points. You know, if I'm going to be honest, if you're not going to adjust the ammunition or the view range, I think I would just take the B3M with the arena I think I'd just take the B3M with the Arena. In fact, if you really want to leave the engine package at home, you could have a fairly cheap tank that has an active protection system. And decent protection. The Upperzet's 2016 doesn't boost the frontal armor. So, 711. What's the SEP feed? And the Abrams is 650, 12, 750, 13. So. Okay. So yeah, that's probably what I would do. Take the B3M. Because the Upperzet's again, the Upperzet's doesn't give you it doesn't give you better view range, better ammunition or whatnot. Go ahead and look at these. And then we have the UR-77 Meteorite. This is basically a Russian Miklik. Also, for the sake of clarification, I mentioned earlier about Mikliks, where you basically fire a line charge, and I described it, and I mentioned that while there was technically no use, or there was technically no recorded use of Mikliks in combat, there were some unconfirmed reports. Well, no, I can't say that. While Mikliks weren't intended to be used against things like infantry, there were some unconfirmed reports out of Syria of Mikliks being used. What I mean specifically was the Russian version of the Miklik. I do not know of any instance where the US used a Miklik in that fashion. So. Support. And then we have the 2K22M Tunguska with a 30mm autocannon. Two 30mm autocannons, I think. M311. At least can intercept cruise missiles. Although 175 is a bit steep, and it's only going to get steeper once you go for the M1. Which improve the missiles. Or the pants here. Which improve the missiles even further. Semi-active, interestingly enough. Semi-active. Okay, so they basically need to be guided in all the way. Although 250 is going to be pretty steep. And the 2S3. Honestly, this looks like something straight out of World of Tanks. Okay, to be fair, that 152mm HE, or that 152mm heat could be interesting. Okay, that's the M2. Reduces the reload time. And makes the gun slightly more accurate. Excuse me. Okay. And then we have the 2S4 Tupan. The Tupan, specifically, is a very, very heavy mortar system that fires a very, very large mortar round. And, yeah. What on earth is that guy doing up there? But yes, you can literally see the size of the mortars, of the mortar projectiles here. I have no idea what these guys are doing. Is this guy supposed to be directing everyone else? Hmm. You also have the 2S5. He's just sitting there. With the 152mm gun with a long range. So was the gun going to elevate? You know, if I'm going to be entirely honest, I'm not sure why you would use the 2S3 if you're going to use the 2S5. Sure, yes, the 2S3 has more ammunition. The 2S5 only has one type, which means the 2S3 is more versatile. But at the same time, like, And then we have the Tupan. Again, we have the Tupan. I think I would be more inclined to use the Tupan. So, if I'm going to be entirely honest, I do kind of wish that, I do kind of wish that unit variations were less of a thing. Not necessarily upgrades like with the 2S3, but variations between the 2S4 and the 2S5 weren't so much of a thing. Because maybe I want to use both the 2S4 and the 2S5 as a, in a deck, but I can't. Although, to be fair, the 2S5 is... Okay, if I'm not using the next thing on the list, I'm going to be using the 2S5. And then just not using the 2S3. If I am, however, if I am going to use the 2S7, I'm probably going to want the 2S4. Because the 2S7 is going to cover pretty much any long-range artillery needs. Well enough. It only has 8 rounds. It only has 8 rounds, though. I mean, it makes sense, but, yeah. This thing, for reference, is an 8-inch gun. Now, most of the other artillery systems you've seen here have either been 152mm or 6 inches, or 155mm or 6.1 inches. This thing is 8. This thing is ridiculous, and I love it. I love every second of it. Oh, and you have an extended range option. Coalitia, eat your heart out. Yes, I know the range is the same, and the gun's probably nowhere near as accurate. Actually, no, we could do a side-by-side. Coalitia with RAP, 12, 90, 240, 180, 75. 15, 110, 240, 180. Oh wait, no, they're about the same. They're about the same dispersion. 42 versus the peons. What is it, 43? But yeah, I've definitely taken the extended range version of this. In fact, a fun fact about the 2S7, the gun produces so much overpressure from firing it that when the gun is about to fire, like when the person responsible for actually shooting the gun pushes the button or pulls the proverbial trigger or whatnot, instead of the oh wow, instead of the gun going off, an alarm blares for a couple seconds, and then the gun goes off as a warning to anyone standing nearby. If I'm going to be honest, one thing I wanted to see was a sort of a U.S. support-focused specialization that had things like the M107 and the M110 as a sort of counterbalance, for lack of a better term, to things like the 2S7. Because the M110 was basically a not U.S. version, but a U.S. equivalent of the 2S7 with a long-barreled 8-inch gun. Or more specifically, was it the M110A1? Because the early M110s had a short-barrel 8-inch gun. So. And then you also had the M107s, which only had a 175mm gun, or 6.9 inches, but also had a very long-range gun system. So maybe something with the range approaching 4,500 to 5,000 meters. And then we have book. Specifically, this is book M2, and it's worth noting that this is the front of the vehicle. This entire structure is actually capable of traversing. And this does have its own radar system. It's known as a TELAR, T-E-L-A-R. See? The entire structure is capable of traversing. Although I don't think it traverses that fast, necessarily. You get 4 missiles, semi-actives, can't be fired on the move, does have multi-target. So what, this is kind of like the airborne, infantry's slam ram, kind of. 20, 70, 215, 150, looking at 16, 30, 180, booking it. Okay, so the missiles that book fires are larger. Alright. It's also slightly more expensive. And then you also have the book M3, which does actually give you better missiles. The book M3 is actually, I thought the book M3 was supposed to have 2 of these 6 missile pods on it. But the book M3 was originally, back during the February beta, in the Guards Tank Battalion Specialization. I know it's Guards Tank Brigade, but I like calling it Guards Tank Battalion to try and add that extra bit of differentiation between the US and the Russian one. Then the MTLB VM, which is basically a cargo carrier that can also carry infantry. Armor package, you can up armor it, but it can't swim or be airdropped. Weapons package. Oh, we got a lot to play with here. So we've got a basic cord or a KP. Okay, that's an interesting placement of a turret. Or a 2A72 if you feel so inclined. Or a 2A72 with a grenade launcher. if you want what is effectively a mini IFV. I can see through the roof hatches that don't exist anymore. Huh. To be fair, compared to something like the, compared to something like the BMP-1, that's not that bad of a price. You get an extra 30mm grenade launcher and larger troop carrying capability. And your protection, well, I suspect your protection suffers. Your protection does in fact severely suffer. But aside from that, it's not terrible bad. And then you have the Strela 10. There was also, if memory serves, there was a version of this on a shoot, what's it called? A BRDM2 chassis. I kind of wish we got to see that in game, but apparently we don't. And you just got like a pintle mounted PKP. Multi-target 2. What do we got here? We've also got this, which is armed with iglas. Lots of iglas. And it actually appears to be better than... Okay, so the Strelas have more damage, a larger blast radius, more pen, and they're faster. But the iglas are just have a longer range, and you've got twice as many of them. Okay. And then you can mount the Cessna. Which, like, doubles the cost. Huh. The Cessna, which is semi-active. Which you can argue is on the downside, because both the iglas and the Strelas are fire and forget. You pull the trigger and then you just forget about them. The Cessna needs to be guided in all the way. It's got a longer range, smaller blast radius, slightly more damage, and they're about moving the same speed as the Strelas. Okay. And then we have the Diva, which is a mortar carrier, carrying just like a box standard 82mm mortar. So. And then we have a 120mm mortar, which is carried externally, and then folds down like that. Or we have an automatic mortar. Because yes, the Russians did develop such a thing. Does it have an idle animation? I'd be legitimately interested in seeing how this thing works. Oh, but it's got a short range for a mortar system. It looks like you have a magazine that you feed in, but I'm not entirely sure where. It's worth noting that in the early 2000s, as part of a contract to develop a a small mobile artillery system for use, I believe, by the Marine Corps. A Romanian company, I think it was Romanian, it was some Eastern European it was a country from one of those Eastern European countries, took one of these automatic mortars and mounted it to the back of a Humvee and put that as part of the competition. It didn't win, but then again, I don't think anyone won that particular competition. I think the competition was canceled. But this is funny because back in early April, along with the other April Fool's videos I mentioned, having already brought up the K-17 with the Sprut turret, one of the April Fool's vehicles was the Grad V, which is basically just a Humvee but with a pack of Grad rockets on the back. The ironic bit is that it's fairly close to this thing. If I'm going to be honest, I think I would prefer to go with the 120mm mortar. Then again, the possibility of going with with this one would be fun. But it would depend on exactly what the mortar does, basically. It almost, like, are they expecting to use a direct fire? I wouldn't assume so, but... And then we have this. This is your transport vehicle. And, yes, those are actually thrusters, because this thing is, in fact, amphibious. And... yeah. Ironically enough, it can actually carry closer to 80 people, if memory serves. I say ironically enough, but it can carry closer to 80 people instead of just the numbers listed here. But if it would probably be a bit OP if it could actually carry the number of people that it can carry in reality. Oh, there we go. I was wondering if it was going to open up. So. And then helicopters, don't have any helicopters. And then we have aircraft. The Su-25SM. What do we got here? We've got a pair of extra fuel tanks, 80 S-8 rockets, 2 cluster bombs, and then 2 R-60s for a 275 point cost. Excuse me. That is not bad, all things considered. You can drop those, and you can drop the fuel tanks in favor of anti-radiation missiles. And nope, that did not, in fact... No, that is now too expensive. Wait, did I pick the anti... No, yeah, I did pick the anti-radiation missiles. I would need something that costs 50 points, like these incendiary bombs. Or these cluster bombs. Just stay at 275. Or a pair of R-73s. Or some of these retarded bombs, incendiaries. 8 of those. Or more rockets, if you're so inclined. Cluster, rockets, incendiaries. I mean, if you just want a literal crap ton of rockets, you can make that happen. Middle pylons, some air-to-ground missiles. Some retarded bombs. Incendiaries clusters. You don't necessarily have a complicated weapons loadout, you'll probably notice. So. What was it? It was the fuel tanks, the wingtips for those. And then you had, I believe, although you can go with that and be at 275 if you want the extra ECM. Or you can leave those at home. Air to ground. Anti-radiation. 85 and 50. So yeah, you can have something like that if you just basically it's going to be used for strafing things and then and some anti-radiation. Or if you have fuel tanks, you might want to maybe invest in something like this. To be fair, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea if you're worried about things like helicopters, but even then, I'd probably just want to go with the R-73s. That's like 150. So what? 125? And then you've got the Su-27 SM. And what does this thing have? A lot of semi-actives. So what, 4 semi-actives and 4 R-73s? Well, that's not great. Well, you got some infrareds. You've got some infrareds, you've got some semi-actives, you've got some R-77s. Inner fuselage. Two R-77s, 4 R-77s. So that's like 380 right there. You don't have an option for drop tanks, but then again, you already have 5 minutes of loader time, so you don't strictly need them. Or, I suppose, if you wanted to, you could probably go with something like this for a strike-orientated setup. Some extra smart bombs. Although even though you don't actually have an option to laze. And then if you really wanted to kit this thing out, how would you do it? Like that, I suppose. Huh. Okay. So you can kind of get this thing down to like 2 cheap ground attack aircraft. If you wanted to set it up like this. Or like this. So. And then this thing, I'm honestly not sure you can get this thing down to 275. Well, no, you can. Yeah, I mean, you kind of can. $260, $275. So yeah, you can. And the reason why I mention that is because this specialization only has 500 aircraft points, and if you combine it with the Guards Tank Brigade specialization, you're going to only have 500 aircraft points, which means you, at most, might be able to get, like, if you're willing to use the extra 10% allotment, maybe one of these and one of these in this exact configuration. Then again, to be fair, 5 minutes of loader time for what is 8 R30 or 8 R77s. Is that 8? No, it's 6 R77s, and oh, well, that's not too bad. If you decide to do that, you can have the 2 R73s and 2 R27ERs. Can't engage helicopters. Like, nothing in this list can, nothing on this aircraft can engage helicopters. But you might be able to take one of these. If you don't have anything on the wingtips, could you get this down to like 250? With anti-radiation, 275, 245. $280, $230, $260. Is there something that costs $40? I don't think so. Still, the point being that you can't really get much, you're gonna have so little to play with. So. Anyway, that's actually all the specializations. Alright. That's fun. I cannot wait to try all of these out.